Welcome to our podcast, Minds Over Media. I'm your host, Kara Hutchinson from the Southwestern Ohio Instructional Technology Association, or SOITA, a service of Public Media Connect. Today, my co-host is Sarah Schroder from the University of Cincinnati, and joining us today is Dr. Cyndy Scheibe, Executive Director of Project Look Sharp out of Ithaca College, as well as Dana Professor of Psychology at Ithaca College. Thank you for talking to us today.
Great. Terrific to be here.
So I'm just going to first start off by asking you to define media literacy. And I know that you've studied how television affects the beliefs and views of people who watch. So I'm also curious how your studies have impacted your definition of media literacy.
Media literacy. So
Mhm.
I will just say that I came to media literacy from being a researcher studying the effects of television on kids, and not so much on their behaviors, but on their beliefs and their attitudes. And when I would go, this was in the early to mid 90s, when I would go and give talks to parents and to teachers about the effects of television. Everybody wanted to know, what can we do about it? And we can monitor what our kids see, we can complain, we could have the government regulate television, which has so not worked at all, in my opinion. um, or we can teach kids to think critically about the messages that they see and hear and read. And that's how I came to media literacy. I met up with people like Faith Rogo and Renee Hobbs and Elizabeth Toman, and people who had been doing media literacy for a long time, and thought, this makes sense to me, in part because a lot of focus in the field of media effects is on harmful media, and therefore we need to protect kids from harmful media messages. And I'm not particularly against that, but it's not very empowering. I mean, we see media literacy as fundamentally literacy in today's world, reading and writing, but in lots of different realms. And we don't teach kids to read to protect them from bad books. That's not why we do it. We do it because it's a fundamental skill and it empowers kids to take on their world. That's, for me, what media literacy is. It's empowering kids to ask questions, to think critically, to be able to express themselves effectively using a wide range of media. So that's how I came to it. So the standard definition that people tend to use for media literacy is that the National Association for Media Literacy Education, namely, uses is 5 elements. So the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, create, and act, using a wide range of different media. Um, and we think all of those are important as well. That you have to have access to media in order to do media literacy, in the same way that you have to have access to print material and books in order to learn how to read. And so access is important, and sometimes access is problematic. But the focus in what we do at Project Look Sharp really is primarily the analysis and the evaluation. So analyzing, decoding media messages, taking them apart, asking questions about them, and then evaluation, which is making a judgment about it. Is this true or not? Is this well done? Do I like it? How does it affect me? And so forth. Um, Most of our work lies in that, but creation is also really key. And I think that you learn a lot about how media messages are made by creating your own media messages and reflecting on the choices that you're making. And then action should be the goal. We want people who are media literate to do things differently, to take actions based on that. So it should affect how you search for information and what information you judge as credible or not, and empower you to be actively involved in your daily life. So that's really the focus. But for us at Project Look Sharp, we have actually a graphic of media literacy, the process of media literacy on our website. And it does include all those elements. But at the heart of it is inquiry and reflection, because all 5 of those elements have to do with asking questions, being curious, and for us, inquiry-based teaching is really at the heart of doing media literacy. And people use inquiry-based teaching to study lots of things and to cover lots of things. It's just in media literacy that's the key. That for us, it's not about what you sometimes see, where the person in charge, the knowledgeable person, the sage on the stage, knows the right answer about the hidden messages in this media message. And now the goal is for me to replace what you think with what I think. For us, that's not the point. The point is that I want to ask you questions about what you see, and that together as a group we'll construct our understanding of this media message. So asking questions, teaching students to ask questions about what they see, both in school but also in their daily lives. We want people to be out in their lives going, what did you see that? Did you notice that? Look at that message. Or somebody tells them something or they read something. We want them to think, is that really true? How could I find that out? So it's all in the questions. And then reflection on your own biases, particularly confirmation bias right now. Getting kindergartners to think about, why do I like that? Or how come I think this is different than my friend thinks? That reflection piece is really key. Being aware of your own perspectives, points of view, and biases when you come to a media message. So inquiry and reflection for us would sum it up, but it's also those other 5 skills.
Well, and Cyndy, I really see this idea of empowerment through media literacy resonating with our K-12 teachers we talk to
You bet.
quite a bit. And I love that focus. And I wonder how you see, what role you see this idea of media literacy as empowerment really playing in developing citizenship in our students. Because we've talked about that previously in a previous episode about this need for development of empowered, engaged citizens. Where do you see media literacy fitting in
Yeah.
that need that we have right now in our our culture as we start to raise up these kids in our classrooms?
So I think digital citizenship and citizenship in general. I mean, my colleague Chris Sperry, who is essentially my co-director at Look Sharp, he always frames this around democracy. That this is about living in a democracy and being citizens in the world. But it's not just about adults. It's about kindergartners and being citizens in your community, in the school, in your family, in your neighborhood, and being aware of the role that media play for us in our lives, how we spend our time, what we believe and don't believe, the way in which we talk with other people that may be modeled after things we see in the media. Um, it's all sorts of different components like that. And when it comes to digital citizenship, a lot of times people will talk about what their um, how people use media, especially social media, in ways that are respectful, in ways that are not hurtful to other people, and in using polite skills, knowing how to join a listserv and say what you think without getting into a huge argument, knowing how to um, just be a good citizen in the world, I think, is both influenced by media, but media literacy can raise those questions and have people be aware of not just what did I say, but how did I share this? And when you're talking about information you receive, you know, say for a social media, do you choose to share this or not? And a lot of people are saying, you want to pause. You don't just want to read a post and share it. Or worse, get something that you don't even read. You just
Right.
you believe you like this person, so you're gonna share it, and you didn't even read it. So not good digital citizenship there. So getting people to be aware of those questions. So again, always reflecting on what are my choices in being out in there in the world, and some of the questions on the Project Look Sharp website. There are two documents we share more than any others. And one is key categories and questions to ask about any media message, or I think it's called about decoding media messages. Um, and there are 10 categories of questions, including authorship and purpose and techniques and context and impact and so forth, credibility, that you want to get in the habit. This is about habits of questions. You just want to get in the habit of asking these questions. And as educators, for us to teach our kids, whether they're in pre-K or whether they're in college, to encourage these habits of inquiry, that you always want to think about who made this and what's their purpose, and whether that's for an ad or a news story or a book or a social media post, or money. We see media pretty widely. So media includes paintings and posters and maps. Maps are made by somebody with a particular perspective and point of view, often incredibly biased. And money, doing a whole riff on money from different countries. We have lessons on the Look Sharp website that involve looking at U.S. money, for example, and who's on the U.S. money and who's not on the U.S. money, and what might that imply about our country and power in our country and who lives in our country, and what's this triangle thing on the $1 bill, and why does it say "In God We Trust" in a country that, in our Constitution, forbids us to have a national religion? And when was that added? Which
Mm.
was in the 1950s. And why? Those questions are all great for exploration. So for me, that's all about just being aware in the world and aware of the media that you receive, but also the impact of your use of media on other people. That was a long answer to that question.
Well, and Cyndy, I was looking at the Project Look Sharp website and the just wealth of resources that are on there for teachers.
Yeah,
And I love that you're really focused on this idea of having students look at impact versus just intention of these messages
yeah.
and kind of digging into that. Do you have a favorite on the
Oh, a
website?
favorite
Like,
lesson?
yeah, well, I'm wondering, like, do you have one that you've seen teachers use and you've really seen success with? Or
Yeah.
do you have a favorite on there in terms of if I was a teacher and I'm jumping in for the first time, this is the one I should look at?
Yeah. So that's such a great question. So I will just tell you that when Look Sharp started, our initial thought was we would go out and do workshops with teachers, and we would introduce them to all the resources, wonderful resources that were out there about media literacy. And this was back in the late 90s and early 2000s. And what teachers said so consistently, this is actually the title of a chapter in one of my books, which is, sounds great, I don't have time. um,
We hear the
because
same
media
thing.
literacy
Same
is great.
exact thing. Yep.
But no, I got to teach the whole history of the United States in one class, or I have to teach 12 novels, or whatever it is that you have to teach. So we decided that Look Sharp's niche, our niche in this world, is to take a curriculum-driven approach to media literacy. So it's about teaching media literacy, but it's really about teaching about the carbon cycle, or teaching about the Civil War, or teaching about poetry, or whatever it is that you're teaching. You can do that using media literacy. And by doing that, you'll build media literacy skills. But we've also found, and this is from reports from teachers, questionnaires, our own observations, that it engages students who often are not that much engaged in school. They may not be strong readers, they may feel disenfranchised for whatever reason, but using media, especially popular media, often engages those kids, and often kids who are not particularly strong readers are better at the media literacy stuff than maybe kids who always have to have the right answer. So teachers say that all the time. We just finished a 2-year grant with librarians, and one of the pieces of feedback from the librarians we worked with was kids who have never raised their hands all year were engaged and insightful in what they said, not just saying any old thing. So for us, that's kind of the key. So we started creating our own lessons in 2003, initially creating kits. So we have a kit called Media Constructions of Presidential Campaigns from 1800 to 2000 right now, as a kit that people could do. And our idea was we'd get funding for the kit, we'd sell it, we'd make lots of money, and then we'd do more kits. And we got funding, we did the kit, it was great. We got great feedback from all sorts of high level people, Bill Moyers and all sorts of people. And we hardly sold any because there's a lot of free stuff out there.
Yeah.
So we decided pretty early on we would just give everything away for free, because we're mission driven, and we'll get grants, and we'll use the grants to create the lessons, and then we'll put the lessons up on the Look Sharp site for free. You have to set up a free account, because we don't have copyright permission for any of this stuff. We have thousands and thousands of media documents, and all of it being used through fair use. And legitimately through the fair use exemption to copyright. But it only works if you're educators. And so you need to set up a free account as an educator in order to access and download the lessons. But once you can do that. So we started that in 2003. We now have more than 800 free lessons that are searchable by curriculum area, grade level, and lots of other different criteria. So the answer to your question of which is my favorite is, first of all, it would depend on what level you're teaching. So I have favorites for early elementary, which is kind of my area where I do research and where I often will work with kids. And I teach at the college level. So I have favorite ones that work at the college level as well. So I'll tell you the one I use probably the most when I go out is to use food packages. Which work great with college students as well as little kids, of looking at what are the messages that you see on this package. And when we've worked with kindergartners, first graders, preschoolers, one of the things we do a lot around is nutrition and nutritional messages, and especially things like fruit. Because fruit is something that kids know they should eat. It's healthy and they should get it. But Fruit Loops and Fruit by the Foot and Sunny D and Fruit Stripe gum and sun-kissed orange soda, do those have fruit in them? They look like they have fruit in them. Cherry 7-Up has a big cherry on it, and it says 100% vitamin C. So That sounds good. But
Mm-hmm.
is there any fruit in cherry 7 Up? No.
No.
Is there any fruit in Fruit Loops? No. And so from a media literacy standpoint, we don't want to just tell kids that. We want to
Mm-hmm.
say, so here's a Fruit Loops package. What do you think? Do you think there's fruit in Fruit Loops? And what makes you think that? And how could we find that out? For us, that's a key question, is we want kids to know, even if I don't know if there's fruit in this, I could find that out. And even if I can't read, I could
Mm-hmm.
ask a grown up, because I know somewhere on the package it's going to tell me what's in this. And I can have a grown up read the ingredients to me and hear if I hear any fruit. And the answer is nope, no fruit
Yep.
in Fruit Loops. And they pretend there is. And so, and then you can choose whether you're going to eat it or not. We're not in the realm of saying, therefore, Fruit Loops are bad, because for us, it's not a moral issue. It's not good or bad. It's just you want to know there's no fruit in Fruit Loops, and there's almost no fruit in Sunny D. What you have to look for is 100% juice. That will tell you something. But Sunny D, 5% juice, not the same. And and so you can teach science, you can teach math, you can teach English and vocabulary, nutrition, health, all sorts of stuff just in that one lesson. So that's probably my favorite, is looking at is there fruit in this lesson or not. But
That's
at the
great.
college level, you can get into things I'm going to teach next Monday on propaganda, and how do we define propaganda, and how do we know what is propaganda. And we have a lesson that compares the video for that Will I Am did for Barack Obama in 2008. Yes, we can video, and has people take that apart in the lens of propaganda. Is this propaganda, and if so, why, and what are the messages about Obama, and how is this constructed, and compares it to the video that was shown at the Ellipse on January 6th at the Trump rally. And same question, is this propaganda? But then also views both of them in terms of the issue of fascist propaganda. Um, and what's the definition of fascist propaganda? And for each of those two videos, the pro-Obama one, the pro-Trump one, are they propaganda? Yes or no, and why? Are they fascist propaganda, and why or why not? So I'm going to use that lesson in my college level class. I probably wouldn't even use it in a high school class, I don't think. Certainly not middle school. It's too thorny.
Yeah.
Um, but on the other hand, on our website, for people who are not familiar with leading a decoding in this sort of constructivist way, we have about 25 demonstration videos that show teachers leading a decoding with kids. And it's annotated, so it shows why they would be asking the questions they're asking. It's designed as professional development for teachers. And Chris Sperry is leading decodings with high school students. There's a few with me leading them with college students. We have wonderful ones with a librarian leading decodings with kindergartners and first graders. And we also have terrific ones we just added with a wonderful middle school social studies teacher. And she does talk about January 6th, and looks at newspaper front pages about January 6th with her 8th grade social studies students, and leads them through a decoding. And there's others by her. She's terrific. So anyway, that's the idea. Is it's going to depend on what you're teaching, the grade level you're teaching, what your goals are, and objectives, because you want to use something that's going to further your goals.
Yeah, for sure, which is the whole point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I also think it's interesting, just as we've been talking, about creating kids that wonder.
Yeah.
Because I used to always ask my elementary kids, like, "What do you wonder?" And a lot of times you get the answer like nothing.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? And I'm like, "Wait a minute. You mean that when you're, like, in the car with mom and dad and you're driving down the road and you, like, see a billboard, you don't say like, 'Oh, I wonder what that is,' or 'I wonder,
Yeah.
where that
Yeah.
came from?'" Because as an adult, I do that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, "Oh, I wonder what in the world that is," or,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I like that idea of just, like, creating kids that wonder.
Yeah. That's a terrific way to put it. We
Mhm.
call it habits of inquiry, but it's exactly, you want kids to say, huh, what is that about?
Yeah.
Or where'd you hear that? I just did a whole thing on urban legends with my college students, and
Oh,
urban
fun.
legends are things you hear and you're not sure where you heard that exactly. Bloody Mary and other urban
Yeah.
legends,
Which
rice thrown at weddings will be harmful to birds, which turns out
w
is not true at all, but commonly
but
believed.
yeah.
So that's what you want. You want people to be thinking, could that really be true? And how could
Mhm.
I find that out? Yeah. So
Yeah, no, I love that. And I on that note, with the urban legends, I used to do, with 3rd graders, like, folklore, and we would talk about
mm,
how there are all different versions of the same story because they were passed down orally, and the thing that I hear from the story isn't the same thing that you hear from the story.
exactly.
So, as I tell it to somebody else, and all of that plays into media literacy.
You bet, you bet. As well
Yeah.
as psychology. I mean, that's why the course I teach is called the Media Literacy and the Psychology of Inquiry.
Okay.
And it draws certainly from education, it draws from communications, but it's also grounded in psychological processes like confirmation bias and cognitive dissonance and processes of selectivity and selective perception and reconstructive memory. So when you hear a story and now you share it with somebody else, what you say was probably not the same as the original
Mhm.
story. And giant game of telephone, and that's how rumors and fake news get created.
Needed.
So for me, it's fascinating.
Mhm.
I love doing this. I love teaching about it, but also that's what I want everybody to be in. So that's what we want. We want
Yeah.
everybody to be out there in the world going, "What? Did you notice that? Look what they said there." Or, "That's not true. How could they possibly say that?" And then
Yeah.
use your voice. Use your voice to talk back to people, in polite ways, to correct people, um, to make a statement.
Yeah.
You want people to be empowered, starting in pre-K.
Mhm.
That's the goal. So
Yeah.
for us, we see this as literacy, and we don't just teach reading in 8th grade and writing in
Mhm.
10th grade. So I don't have anything against trying to do a unit or a day or a week or a year on media literacy, but that's not how we teach literacy. So
Right.
we should be teaching this developmentally, beginning in pre-K, and
Mhm.
in we think in every curriculum area wherever it makes sense. And so if you can start these conversations early and get kindergartners asking these kinds of questions, so
To hear
start
them.
early, just in whatever ways are developmentally appropriate teachable moments.
Mhm.
That if you can get in the habit as an educator or a parent, of when kids ask a question, instead of necessarily answering it, of saying, huh, how could we find that out?
Mhm.
And then together jointly figuring that out. Let's
That
see.
yeah.
So we have a lesson on
I love
dinosaurs.
that.
What's true about dinosaurs? That we designed because of my grandson, who dinosaurs were his life.
Yeah.
And And we thought, okay, we should do a lesson on dinosaurs. And it uses about 8 or 10 sources about dinosaurs, including, a Smithsonian a report and documentaries and Disney movies and Legos,
Oh,
Tyrannosaurus
nice.
Rex eating a car. And for each one, the conversation is, what do you learn about dinosaurs? And is that really true?
Uh-huh.
So what does this show that dinosaurs eat? Trees.
Yeah.
Is that really true? Cars.
Yeah.
Is that true? Do dinosaurs eat cars? My grandson said, well, this one does.
Oh, that's
So
funny.
yeah. And so we finished the whole thing, we published it. And then I was doing it with my grandson, who was 4 at the time. And I got to one and I said, now, what does this brontosaurus eat? And he said, yeah, that is not a brontosaurus. That is a
Oh.
brachiosaurus. Um,
Oh.
and we had to go change the lesson because we were wrong. Our 4-year-old consultant corrected us.
That's
So look how
fantastic.
empowering that is. That's just great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
love that. Oh my gosh, and he was the expert.
he was, man, better than us, knows
Yeah.
far more than I do about things. I think all parents know how incredibly bright kids are. They just soak up this knowledge. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
They are really just giant
they
sponges.
are. It's just
They
great. So if we can
Mhm,
keep that and have
mhm,
it happen in the realm of media, that's why it's so much more empowering than saying, yeah, we're not going to let you use that kind of media
mhm.
because it's bad for you.
Yeah.
Where these are bad foods, these are good foods. Yeah, you don't learn anything from that. You aren't empowered. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Changing just changing the dialogue, I guess, you
yeah,
know?
yeah,
Yeah, and the way
yeah.
you approach it. No, that's great.
I think for me, any teacher who teaches anything at any grade level will find a way for media literacy to be part of their conversations with kids and their work with kids. And just I would encourage people maybe to join the National Association for Media Literacy Education. Membership is free. And that's so it's namely.net, NAMLE.net. That's just a wonderful resource. And they hold a conference every year, and National Media Literacy Week, US Media Literacy Week,
Mhm.
that you can find online. Come to the Look Sharp website, be in touch with us, and for me, there's a lot to do, and it's not, Look Sharp can't do it all. So lots of wonderful, wonderful organizations are out there doing media literacy. Just find your peeps and get involved.
Yeah, I love that, and thank you for such a great conversation. Thanks for listening to our Minds Over Media podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation today and learned something new. You can find the show notes and resources in the podcast description on your listening platform. For information on earning contact hours for listening, visit teachercampus.org and under all courses, search Minds Over Media. This podcast is produced by Soida and CET EdTech in partnership with the University of Cincinnati.